Hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar. Our topic today is Beyond the Help Desk, Processes to Streamline Your Lotus Application Support. And our presenter today is Gayatri Vishwanathan from Maarga Systems. We welcome everyone and thank you for your time. We appreciate everyone's carving out some time of their day to join us. This is a part of an ongoing webinars from Notes Code. So I'll now turn the time over to Gayatri, and she'll now be able to continue on with her webinar. Gayatri, I'm now switching control over to you.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking the time today to come and attend this. Today's webinar is about Beyond the Help Desk and getting software maintenance processes to work for you. I am Gayatri. I'm also called Guy Vishwanathan, a little easier. I have about 15 years of experience in the industry. I started off with IBM, and that's where I started off working with the Lotus platform. Then I was a consultant in PricewaterhouseCoopers, and for the last 10 years, I've been managing operations at Maarga Systems and also have been designing technical solutions. Jumping right in, software maintenance is any changes that have to be made to a software after it has been delivered to customers and users. And as you can see on screen, Gartner has shown that the value of a software application is not kind of realized completely immediately after it has been rolled out. Now, you start off spending some expenses, building the software, and then initially there's some time where the users get trained, get used to the application itself, and there's a period of attain its maximum value, and there's a steady state over time. And then after some time, maybe because some of the business rules change, and sometimes it's because of infrastructure issues, then again the usage and the value drops. During this time is when some more investments are being made. There is like operations cost to make this application work for you, and there is regular application maintenance, and how much it is and what we need to invest in that keeps varying, as you can see. And around the time where the value drops is when we need to make some investments in upgrading the software, maybe adding new functionality, changing some of the business rules, and then so that the value again gets improved and then goes on, repeats over time. So as you can see, research has shown that sometimes the application maintenance cost could be anywhere between 40 and 80% of the total life cycle cost of a particular application and project. That's why it's quite important. And there are many different types of application maintenance. Now, the most common that you're likely to have seen is corrective, which is where you have people coming in with support requests, they have incidents, and then you make sure that those are corrected. And it's basic hygiene. If your application is not corrected and the bugs are not fixed, people are not going to use it, and very quickly it would fall into entropy. And that's your corrective part. Having said that, there are three other types, which is preventive, adaptive, and perfective, and we'll see what these are. Now, preventive is kind of keeping on continuously improving your application, looking at what kind of issues could potentially come up, and proactively fixing those. Adaptive maintenance is a case of planning for changing environments, and here's something that happened to us. There was a Monday morning. Until then, things are very smooth, and suddenly there's a significant raise in support tickets on a particular application. Nothing has changed. The application team hasn't touched anything, no new rollouts, and yet a difference was seen. And then when we investigated the cause, the problem was the previous weekend, the infrastructure team, based on their inputs, they had just taken Domino server from a Windows platform, moved it off to a Linux platform. And Domino being Domino, everything worked. The mails were routing, the application came up, and it's just that specific functionality that was using Windows specific calls stopped working. And that's something that we would want to prevent from happening, and that's where adaptive maintenance comes into play. You plan for changes in environment and make sure application continues to work. The last one is to kind of add more value to the user. So there may be changes in technology that comes up, and you want to bring that in either by using that, the performance of the application becomes better, or maybe you can add a new feature that was not possible before, and suddenly the application becomes more valuable to the user. So there are many different process frameworks available to handle this kind of application maintenance, and one of the very common ones, adopted ones, is called ITIL. It's very comprehensive framework which looks at, starting off from strategizing what services you offer, and then going on to designing services, transitioning them over from, starting, let's say you have a new CRM application that you're rolling out. So that's a new service you're offering to the users. So it starts off from designing it, what levels, which users are going to use it, and things like that. Moving on to transitioning, where you have clarity on where is it going to be hosted and what kind of configuration is needed, making sure that all the functionality will work, releasing it and managing the deployment cycles, having an FAQ or a knowledge base to kind of manage the application information, planning and executing changes, and then it goes over to service operations, where we look at problem management or incident ticket management and even management of the service itself. Now this is very comprehensive. It looks at, overarchingly, it looks at continuous process improvement as well. The problem here is it's not that easy. So for implementing an ITIL, you need executive sponsorship. You need organization-wide change management. You need to plan this out very, very carefully. Now, it's not something just the IT department or just the Lotus team within the IT department can roll out. So, what can you do? Now, you may be part of the IT department. You may be the IT department. In either case, there are some processes that you can adopt within your own team and departments that can improve customer satisfaction, that can significantly improve the way you handle application maintenance as a whole. And today's webinar is all about that. We are taking up specific processes and walking you through what these processes are, what those steps are, and what kind of benefits you can get. And at least with a couple of processes, showing some artifacts where you can take a look at how it can be implemented as well. So let's get into what the key processes that we are looking into are. Now we're looking into incident management, which is pretty much a comprehensive customer support system. Something called the application portfolio management, which takes a bird's eye view of your overall application portfolio across different business units. An application management process which delves deeper into a specific application, which may comprise of one or more databases, one or more functionalities, how you can manage that. Release managements and change management, which are more towards how do you take your application and push it across to your users. Let's go deeper into each of these. We started off with an incident management, which is, I presume most of you have a ticketing system, a single place where customer support people are able to handle calls. They get all their incidents from end users and log it in one place, and you are able to take a look at that. Now, one of the things that comes into play when we are talking about incident management is something called service level agreement. I know quite a few of you have said that you have implemented this in your organizations. We will just go through what this is and how it helps a little bit. The SLA is nothing but a contract between you and your end customer. Now, it kind of puts a boundary around what you will support what kind of issues you are ready to handle, and what level of support you are ready to provide. And it also clearly gives you what is priority and what can wait. A simple way of defining priority and classification of incidents between the IT team and the user team and the end users in your organization. Now, here's an example again. One of our customers, in a specific location, had a new Domino server installed, put an insurance tracking application. I think they purchased it from a vendor, and a week later there was an incident that was reported saying, I can't get emails from my insurance tracking system in my inbox. Now the IT support team just went, what? What insurance tracking system? We don't know about it. And then after digging deeper, we found that all they had done was set up their own Domino server with the same name organization as the overall or the companies, and expected mails to get automatically routed. Now that's not something that you want to find out from an incident. You would rather know about it ahead of time. Now, one of the key things with SLAs is you need to track them so that you know what is happening, and from that feedback you can make modifications. So as we go deeper into the incident management process, what you're seeing on screen is an overview of all the different steps that get performed. Now each of these steps, when we write down the process, actually has an input, has who will perform this, and it also has a clearly defined output. Let's take an example of the step. Let's take analyze incident. Now when you take analyze incident, the input to it is an incident document. Now you could have a Lotus Notes system, you could have remedy, you could have any kind of ticketing system, but there is a clear documented ticket that's been raised, which has information on who raised it, when it was raised, and some information about the specific issue that the person is facing as well. Now, how does this particular incident land up at your desk? Now, typically, this particular step is being performed by an L2 or an L3 support person, and it lands on their desk because an L1 support person did the previous step of routing this incident. When it comes to you, now what additional input you may need is a conversation with the customer to add additional data so that this incident information is complete. Then the step itself is analyzing it, understanding what could be the cause of this incident, and the output would be additional information into the incident ticket itself, which says what is the root cause, a detailed analysis of how you went through the step, and that particular updated incident document becomes part of the system. It goes on to either become a problem request, or it goes on to become a solution, and you update the solution into the ticket itself. So that's how each of these steps would be defined and documented, so there is clarity at each level what needs to get done. Let's see what the benefits are. One, there's clear documentation for every incident and up-to-date solutions. Now there is a big benefit out of this is over time, as you roll this out and keep it maintained, more and more tickets get solved by your L1 and L2 people, with L3 support people, which are the brains, right, have the time to really concentrate on things that are going wrong very seriously, or they can concentrate on adding new features or developing new applications. Two, there's a single point of entry for all tickets, so it really frees up the time of the rest of the support team, so that every user, they don't just pick up the phone and call you for their needs, they call the support team. There's up-to-date information about what gets rolled out, when it gets rolled out, and because of the rollout, what new kind of support that might get added upon, and the team itself can get trained on that, and business users can also be updated with the same information. And there is clarity in terms of how to route the tickets. So if someone in the L1 team doesn't know how to handle it, there's clarity who it should go to, when it should go to, and it also frees up the time of the L2 and L3 people. Of course, having a dashboard on top of it helps you track the SLA, from which you get derived more reports that are useful down the line. Moving on, incident management was more like a day-to-day operations-based process. Now, the application portfolio management is a bird's eye view process. It goes at a higher level, and it involves both the IT and the business functions, and it kind of is used to synergize both. Let's look at that in detail. This process itself includes some amount of planning and forecasting, and it's kind of brings in a synergy between the IT team, initiatives that IT team takes up, and the business users' needs, brings in an alignment in both, and gives an ability to plan and implement solutions more at an organization level. Now, for making this happen, there are two lists that are critical. Number one is a list of all applications that you have in your organization. That's non-negotiable. Having that one list available makes it very, very useful. And what does this list contain? The details. It has the application name itself, who is the owner of this application, which department owns this, key developers who have worked on this. Now, again, in some of your organizations, an application would have been developed like 5 years back and no one knows who developed it. But having an idea of who has at least an inclination or an intimation about what this application does and writing it down helps. Then a description of what this application does, key users of this application, and a track of the last design modification that was done to it. As you mature, you can also track additional things about the application, which is overall effort and cost of building it, overall maintenance effort and cost, and any special notes regarding the specific application. Keeping this list gives you one advantage. When you have requests from a different business unit or customer for similar functionality, then you don't have to rebuild it. You know that there's existing applications that can be reused and functionality that can be provisioned for other users. Some of the benefits that we get is there is transparency regarding the IT plans and the budgets of business users. So when you look at it, IT may take an initiative this year saying, hey, we may have to support mobile, that's becoming a hot area. Now, if business users also come up and ask for mobility, then you know that there is synchronization there, and you may plan for specific pilot projects this year to kind of bring in this kind of functionality. As there is a synergy that gets built up. You can influence some of the plans that business users have. Now, in an example, like we have a marketing department that wanted to run campaigns for existing customers. There is already a CRM application that has a list of all the customers that was built on Lotus Notes. So it was possible for IT to go in with the marketing team, discuss with them how the specific information in the CRM can be used for their campaign monitoring. And initially they were considering like subscribing to something outside, but it was more beneficial to use or extend the CRM to build this functionality because a lot of the data was already available. Having a complete knowledge of existing IT solutions help like reuse some of this functionality and reuse some of these applications in different contexts. And that gives potential savings, and also business users get to know where their initiatives are from the IT side. Makes them happy to know if their initiative is being worked on. Now let's go more deep into specifics of a particular application. Now we've talked about having a portfolio. We've also talked about day-to-day incident tracking. What is application management? It's basically looking at a specific application and looking at proactive maintenance of it. At the same time, looking at the analysis of all the kind of incidents that are happening with the specific application, and also reporting on the operation of the application itself. Now, knowing that this is one of the key processes with respect to the application maintenance, we'll start off with the input into this process itself. This process kicks in as soon as an application is rolled out to your end customer. Now, my assumption is that at least the newer applications that you are developing follows a defined process. So you have some requirements documented, you go through an analysis and design phase and kind of look at how best you can develop this application, test it and document it at least to a reasonable level so that maintenance can be a little easier. So one of the artifacts that becomes an input to this process is the application documentation, and it is also an artifact that gets continuously maintained as you make modifications to applications or make any fixes and things like that. So once this application is rolled out, one of the things that you do is analyze the kind of tickets that are being raised on this particular application. Now you could find initially there may be a whole bunch of training related tickets. People didn't know how to use it. And once they get used to using it, then there may be a set of issues that come up with respect to functionality. And as it stabilizes, you are more likely to get enhancement requests or change requests for a particular application. Now, analyzing the tickets that come through will give you this kind of an insight into this particular application. When you create reports, and so when we talked about the service level agreements, typically you have an organization-wide SLA, but sometimes depending upon a particular application's criticality, how many users use it, you may even have a specific SLA for an application. You may want your CRM application to be available 99+% so that all your users can use it. Things like that. So the report, when you talk about the application operation, would be based on how well are you meeting the SLAs, how well are you targeting and fixing the problems that come up. And that's something that, depending upon the application, you can produce either a monthly report or a quarterly report, and it would contain this kind of information. Following that is the analyze and act phase. The input for the analyze and act phase is 1, the SLAs, 2, based on the reports that you produced and an analysis of the incidents, you start looking at what kind of preventive maintenance you can do for this, and also look at, that's the time when you look at what can I add more. Should I be planning for some adaptive maintenance? Should I be planning for some changes to the application? So that is the step where you do that. And the output of the analyze and act are typically either a change request that you create or a new release that you plan, and that's what comes out of the analyze and act step. Information management is very critical here. You need to make sure that both the end customers as well as the customer support team are updated based on what's happening with the specific application. If you plan releases, if you plan new changes, or if there are some specific problems that occurred that are very severe, it's better to upfront inform these people so that they know what to do. So again, the benefits. When you have documentation, then you are not the bottleneck. If someone else can come, take a look at the documentation and also can support this and maintain this. When you do regular analysis and proactive action, what happens is the application's life lives longer. You are able to derive the value for much longer. And of course, there's a side benefit of updating your own skills and tools. If you find there's maybe a new technology change that comes from, in the Lotus platform, the X pages was something like that. Or earlier there was something called web services. These were technology changes that were brought about, which added value to the application. And by bringing that value into your application, you are updating your skills and your ability as well. And of course, by informing people, you keep them, they know what's coming up, and they are in general, you increase the customer satisfaction because they know what's going on. So moving on, we're talking about the release management process. Now, the release management process is not just tracking your templates. It's more than that. It is important. It's very important to make sure that you have a formal process. You don't put things into your production environment without testing it in UAT, and that's part of the release process as well. But the release management that I talk about is a little more than that, and it's got some specific steps. One is something called a bundle, a release bundle. Now, what does this mean? Basically, when you look at a cluster of applications, you will be able to find things that are common to them, or issues that could be common to them, that instead of fixing them one by one or in each individual application, you can combine them and actually create a bundle, and you can plan out these releases, and this also gives you an ability to architect a solution, design the solution, test it more rigorously, and do a planned release. So that's also part of the release management process. As part of the complete implementation is when you take care of things like template tracking, which are hygiene stuff, and making sure that the right versions go out. Let's take an example of a sample release notes document, and that will give a little bit input into this process. So here's an example. We figured out there was a new vulnerability called cross-site scripting, where people could enter JavaScript code into web applications, into the text field, and run that, and it had a potential to disrupt the application itself. Now, once we figured out that this kind of a vulnerability existed, it made sense not to just go and fix one application. In this particular environment, we had a whole bunch of applications where we could say we had to plan it out and said, hey, this functionality, this vulnerability needs to be fixed. We could architect a solution that could then be used on any new application that was going to be developed in this particular organization. And at the end of it, we could roll it out as a bundle. Now, key things are each bundle has a unique name, and there is a description. And here's an important thing. When you plan a release, you can also assign a project manager or a lead within your team. And it can be someone from your team who just wears that hat, but they are responsible for getting it completely done and rolled out. And there's a date and a build. And you also specify all the different applications that are being impacted by this particular release. And you can add any comments that there are so that the person who's actually putting into production knows what needs to be done. Here's something very important. It's a track of what new features were added, what changes were done, what bugs were fixed. In this specific case, it was predominantly changes, but you could combine new features, bugs, and changes to make a release. And of course, you can track any open issues, and when you pass this on to your support team, they know that if they hit upon the same open issue, and typically these are very minor stuff, they can let the user know that we know about it and it will get fixed in the future release. So, doing this, what is the benefit you derive? One, when you plan this out, you also need to get the cooperation from the business users. Sometimes, your release may include multiple different people. It may be including, the HR department and the marketing department. You need to get their buy-in before you plan out a release. But it's also worthwhile doing that is because you plan and manage your releases and also you synchronize it. For example, if you know that your employee directory is going to go through a change, it really doesn't make sense to plan a vacation DB update before that, because then you will have to do another change again. It makes sense to plan it out so that you first release your employee DB changes and then you release your vacation DB changes. And of course, this involves some amount of planning. It does involve some amount of predefined, and you have to discuss with them, convince the users, and then take the step. And moving on is the final one, which is the change management process. And I'm sure most of you have faced where some user wanted some change and that they wanted it yesterday. How do you manage that? How do you make sure that you don't disrupt existing stuff with the changes that got requested? And more importantly, that you don't keep doing the same change over and over again. The key lies in this process. Now, the input to this process itself could be a ticket, maybe because someone raised an issue or an incident, that's where it started off, or it could be internal because you know that some functionality needs to change, or because you want to add some new functionality, and that's where you start off this change process. The first step is to define the request source and document that. Then you analyze this request, especially looking at what is getting impacted. The key here is, now this ties back into your application list. One of the things there you may document is what are the dependencies of a particular application. Now if you know that your CRM is going to have some export into your ERP system, you better document it so that when you have a change that comes up, you know there's going to be an impact. Then comes an approval or a rejection of a change, and this typically happens by the head of the business unit or the IT head, which will be based on what is the impact, how long is it going to take, is it mandatory that we do it right now. Based on all these parameters, there would be an approval, and then you implement and roll out the change. Let's take a look, and this is one of the important documents that we feel it needs to be maintained. Now you could potentially track each request. Now create a new document for each change request and calculate the impact and keep it. It is important, but if you don't have the time, at least we need to maintain a change request tracker for each application. What gets tracked here, for example, is a unique ID, a source. Where did this change originate? It could be because of an email that got sent to you. It could be because of an incident, or it could be a ticket. Who requested this change, and when did you receive it, and what is its priority? Typically a high, medium, low. And what is the description? For example, in this particular case, the vacation system needed a change because there was going to be a policy change in the organization, and hopefully you had sufficient time. They didn't say, I'm going to change the policy come June 30th and gave you the information hardly a month ago. Here it was on 1st of June. Who is it going to be assigned to? So this is where you can plan out, even if you are just a one-man organization, support in the entire Lotus support team, you can wear the different hats. You can say, at this point in time, I'm working on changes, I'm working on making new application functionality, or maybe even a complete new application development. Whereas at different times, you would say, okay, now I'm going to be working on my support tickets, maybe L2 support or L3 support. You can also track, what are the things that get impacted because of that. So here, if in this particular case, it could be both your employee database as well as your vacation management database. Both of them get impacted. How much time is it likely to take for a team to complete it? Starting off from designing it all the way to rollout. When is it getting released? And track of how long did it really take. There is an estimation and an effort. Now, tracking this over a period of time gives you a significant insight into how this application evolves, and it also gives you, a track of all the different changes that got requested. So if something keeps going back and forth, a particular functionality, then you know it's time to put your heads up and say, let's finalize one particular way of doing things. Again, specific benefits, you have there's documentation. Number one, you can go back and say this is why we changed it, on when we changed it, and what was the impact, and how did we manage that. And being able to say that, especially if you have some applications that run multi-years, it helps knowing what really happened to them. Two, you may not want to you may want to club multiple changes together, and this again helps you do that. You would only do a change request for requirements with very high priority. If they are low priority, you are likely to bundle them and put them in the release process than create a change request and do them very quickly. You have an evaluation of the impact, and the impact is not just your application. When you track what are the dependencies, you immediately bring in the perspective of any change that happens to my application may impact the dependent application. A classic case is, when data gets exported from your application, goes into SQL. Now, if you go ahead and change some of your primary key data and how your views are kept up, some of your LEI or your export to SQL may just fail, and it's better to know about what the dependencies are, what the impact is, and document it before you go forward with some of these. So, to summarize, your process journey can start small. It's up to you to begin. It can start with even just your own support team, and these processes scale. It could be implemented at a very small scale within your Lotus support team, or it could be implemented across multi-country, multi-project or multi-technology teams as well. Now, the key to this is the rigor in practice. If you don't maintain your application portfolio at least every quarter, it becomes of no use come 6 months later, because you don't know, you are not able to keep track. 2 years later, it's just junk. Similarly, if you don't track your SLA, you can't get the insights that it offers on what kind of tickets that come up and how long you're taking to fix them. So the key is to implement the rigor in practice. Also, take the time to get and implement the feedback. So as you're doing it, you are likely to get feedback from business users. They may like some of what you're doing in terms of planning out releases, synergizing, definitely giving them cost savings when you are trying to bundle in functionality together. They may like it. At the same time, because you're pushing back on changes, they may not. So they will come back and give you the feedback, and you can adjust your processes based on what level your organization is. Some organizations may just adapt it very, very well. Some of them may resist and may take more time. The key thing is, by staying along with this and taking the time, you will reap the benefits over time, and you will set the stage for really good ROI, and this you can see over time. It's typically not a quick fix, oh, I'll see this tomorrow, but give enough time, maybe start off with the first 6 months to look at it, and over a year or two, you would see all the benefits accrue. That's all I have at this point in time, and I'm open for questions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Guy. If you do have questions for Guy, go ahead and type them in. You may need to expand your GoToWebinar panel, and you can type in your questions, and then we can read them back to Guy, and she can respond. Thank you so much for this very informative information. I know at times it is a struggle to maintain applications after they've been released, and making sure that we're not spending all of our time in post-development or post-release development and bug fixing. But if we do incur those scenarios, it is much better to have a process in place. So again, if you do have a question for Guy, now is the time to go ahead and type that in. We do appreciate your time being here. This webinar has been recorded and will be posted to the Notes Code website so you can pass that along to your colleagues. It will also be posted on the Maarga Systems website, so we'll send you links to both so that you can have that. It does not look like we have a question incoming this time. There was an attendee that could not attend. It did email me a question, actually two questions. The first one is, does Maarga Systems offer any type of developed solution to track these SLAs and post release scenarios?
No, we don't have a product as an offering. We use tools when we do the maintenance for organizations, but we don't have a product offering that we sell to customers.
Okay, perfect. The second question is, if a very defined process is implemented, what kind of cost savings do you experience, or should a company experience in their application process? Excuse me, application support processes?
Yeah, I've seen based on the ITIL, and they have taken let's say like a 200 people organization, and they take numbers, right? They take a per hour productivity rate of say about $50, and then they calculate. So each of these processes, they have a defined ROI, and it's over time. It's not like immediate, but they have shown that a formalized incident management process can give you, for such kind of an organization, it could be anywhere from like per year cost benefits of I think they said about $500,000 or something like that. So each of these, and I can send some information out to you on this, which shows, and this is ITIL based information, which takes these specific processes, puts numbers against them, and calculates ROI on them.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I believe those are all the questions that we have. So I do appreciate your time and your presentation. It's very informative, and thank you once again to the attendees. Guys, is there any additional information you'd like to provide to the attendees today?
Nothing else, Scott. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I love being here.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much. Everyone have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.